Welcome to the Moviegoers Society podcast, brought to you by Nerdtropolis. I'm your host, Sean Tajipour, the mayor of Nerdtropolis. And join me once again is my co-host, Drew Munhausen, the professional media and movie mastermind, who has shot himself into space. Apparently, there was a movie theater up there, and he went up there just to catch a special screening of a film we're going to actually talk about just briefly. But yeah, what movie did you go to space to go watch?
First off, small sidebar. Good friend of mine, Dakota, listens to our show every week. He said his least favorite gimmick that we do is me having a different background from a movie and pretending that that's where I am. So naturally, that just means I'm going to be doubling down on that. So I am absolutely floating in the orbits of Earth, hanging out in the International Space Station this week, where I was able to. I was one of the only people on Earth, or not on Earth, to have viewed the movie I.S.S, as we talked about last week, being one of the only new releases in theaters last weekend and the weekend before that, because right now the theatrical landscape's just a total dead zone. But I went and saw this movie for the benefit of the podcast, because the Nerdtropolis Moviegoer Society listeners and viewers are all clamoring to know what we thought of I.S.S now in theaters.
What a brave soul you are, Drew. I must say that. And yeah, in this podcast, we dive into the world of cinema, exploring everything from beloved classics to the latest blockbusters and not blockbusters like I.S.S. We're on episode 28, and we're actually going to also dive into our television sets and travel back to the 90s to visit the lovable and furry Ted, dive into another MCU dud. Yes, I said MCU dud with Echo. But before we get into all of that, we want to make sure that you can connect with us online. You can find me on every single social media platform you can think of at Sean Taj. Nerdtropolis is just at Nerdtropolis. Find us on Twitter /X, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Pinterest, TikTok. Tons of content for y'all out there. And don't forget to visit nerdtropolis.com for your daily dose of movie news, reviews, interviews, and trailers. And Drew, where can they find you? We're not contributing to Nerdtropolis.
You can find me at Drew Munhausen on all the different social media platforms and weekly over at Fresh Out the Podcast.
Also, don't forget to catch up on previous episodes of the Moviegoer Society. Tons of episodes to catch up on. Tune into my podcast, Nerdtropolis Mayor Presents. I'm still looking for a new name for that, possibly, or I'm sticking to this one, but it's all on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and the Nerdtropolis YouTube channel. I just dropped an interview with Eli Roth of Thanksgiving. I dropped another interview as well. But also, if you're an Office fan, a fan of The Office, I spoke to Jan from The Office. I'm Laura Hardin. About a lot of things, but that's gonna be dropping soon. And I have a bunch of stuff I'm sitting on. I need just maybe twice a week be putting them out. But that's all on our Nerdtropolis YouTube channel. That's like, I updated today. It looks like we're getting some followers, some views. We're at like accurately, we're at 3,200 subscribers.
That's great.
So if we're growing, Drew, and I love seeing that. So everyone out there, check out our other videos, leave a comment, like all that stuff. And the really cool thing is, like, we got to unlock like a shopping mode on there. And so I know a lot of people have been complimenting this Nerdtropolis shirt I've been wearing. So I actually dropped that on the Nerdtropolis YouTube channel store. You can actually grab the shirt I'm wearing.
I could have worn my Sonic Nerdtropolis shirt.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. That's a good throwback one. But yeah, you can find this one, another design, on the YouTube channel, and I'll probably link it in the video. But yeah, everyone's been asking about this. I get a lot of compliments on this from all the actors and directors. They love it. They just love it, the throwback. And I think it's very fitting for Ted today as well. But before we get into the shows and the film I.S.S, Drew, did you catch the new Ghostbusters trailer?
I did. I think it looks fun. I mean, Ghostbusters is one of those franchises that I'm just always going to be excited about, no matter how quality it's going to be, or looks or doesn't look, you know, all of that. I'm always going to get excited for it. I actually thought Afterlife, the past film, I have my issues with the last act of that movie that kind of turned me off to some of it, but leading up to that, I thought that movie was actually really good. And so that's a movie I have to remind myself that, like, that movie's actually pretty solid, and I shouldn't let the little things that I didn't like ruin the whole. So I have to remind myself of that. So that being said, I'm looking forward to more with this cast and more from this franchise always.
Yeah, it seems like they're gonna let this franchise explode in this film, giving us some new actors as well, some new Ghostbusters, old Ghostbusters, and the ones we saw in Afterlife. It's gonna be awesome. I'm a big Ghostbusters fan. I got to go to Sony Pictures, go to Ghost Corp's office, where they named the street like Ivan Reitman Way, which is awesome, and see the original Ghostbusters car from the first film that they redid, and it sits out there. And yeah, big Ghostbusters fan. I don't know if you can see behind me, but I have my proton pack back there. So I'm actually, when we do the Ghostbusters episode of the Moviegoers Society, I'll probably be wearing some stuff, you know. I'll be in full costume. And also, I just wanted to make note that we announced the last award for the Nerdtropolis Awards. It was something I've been working on. Want to do something very special. We have the Lance Reddick Legacy Luminary Award, which got the blessing from Lance's wife. I wanted to award somebody that embodied the enthusiasm, the spirit, the fun, the nerdiness, the work ethic that Lance was giving off, especially during my first in-person interview, which was with Lance. What a great guy. It's so sad that we have lost him, but wanted to pick someone from the list of interviews I did the last year. I did so many interviews, and really there was a standout interview that I did with these two directors. You might not know the names, but you know their films. But Adil El Arbi and Bilal Falal, they are the directors at Bad Boys for Life. They're doing the fourth Bad Boys film. They directed 2 episodes of Miss Marvel. They directed a great film called Rebel. And then they also are the ones that were behind the Batgirl film. Despite even the Batgirl film stuff, they were so excited to talk about it with me and everything else. So they really embodied Lance's spirit when I was talking to them. So enthusiastic. And if you just go on the website, you find that article, watch all the interviews with Lance and with these guys, you'll see like the enthusiasm between everybody that spoke to me. And they are our inaugural winners for the Lance Reddick Legacy Luminary Award. And we're looking forward to doing this next year and the following year and go forth with it. And yeah, they definitely were super exciting to talk about. And it was one of my favorite interviews I've probably done outside of Lance. They were just thinking about it. They're like laughing the whole time and love talking about their projects and the passion they have. They're big time nerds for sure.
That's a great award. I'm really excited for that. And I know the Lance Reddick interview for Nerdtropolis was a big deal at the time, just as Nerdtropolis is growing and doing more interviews. And that was a really great one. And not to mention how just enthusiastic he was. So I think that's a really awesome move. And I think that'll be a great one annually to see who gets it in the future, especially with so many interviews dropping consistently. I'm sure there's going to be some fun winners in the future.
Yeah, it's wild. It's been picking up a lot already for 2024. I have a lot of fun stuff planned. I'm still waiting for confirmation, but stay tuned for more fun interviews. But Drew, let's see where you're at right now. Let's talk about this film I.S.S. that I didn't know about. I think I got an email about it, but I don't think I put it together what it was. It was just a very vague email. This movie was coming out. I thought it really was like a Discovery Channel project, and I kind of skipped over it, not knowing what it was, even though I am a big space nerd. But yeah, tell us about I.S.S.
I don't think you're alone in that. This movie has been out for 2 weekends now, and it hasn't even made $6 million at the box office. So, I mean, it was number 13 at the box office in its second weekend, and that's behind Wonka and Mean Girls and The Beekeeper, and some of these movies that have been out for a while. So this one's been barely marketed. I don't think that there's any awareness. And to your point, when I understand not everybody is like myself, where you go on to your local theater's website each week, see what the new releases are, see what's playing near you, see what's still on the list that you need to check out. I understand that we are in the minority of that as cinephiles and film lovers. That being said, when I saw this movie pop up, I had not seen a trailer. I was not aware of it. And like you, based on the title alone, it's like, is this a documentary? Is this an educational film? But as I started to look more into it, I can tell you that I.S.S., it's directed by Gabriella Copperthwaite, who she's known for. She directed Blackfish, the orca documentary that was kind of viral several years ago, and some other films. And I.S.S. stars Ariana DeBose, recent Oscar winner for West Side Story, Chris Messina, and a few others. And the plot reads as this, which to me, this couple line synopsis sounds pretty interesting. It says, when a World War event occurs on Earth, America and Russia, both nations, secretly contact their astronauts aboard the ISS and give them instructions to take control of the station by any means necessary. So I'm like, that sounds kind of fun. And first off, when you see this movie, it's not, this is like a true Dumpuary release, right? Like, I know I'm keep saying Dumpuary every week on this podcast, but it's because it's true. Like the theatrical landscape right now is pretty barren. And this is a true, like, this just got dumped in theaters with little fanfare, little marketing. It's just out there for people to seek out. And it's not bad. It's not a bad movie by any means. It's actually like pretty competently made. The performances are fine. It's just like it's only 95 minutes long. Even at 95 minutes, it still kind of drags a bit at times, but it is exactly that. It starts off with title cards saying that, you know, at any given time, the International Space Station is manned by both Russian and American astronauts as like a truce between nations, and so then you cut to Ariana DeBose is going up to the International Space Station. You know, it's her first time in space, first time aboard the ISS. She's a researcher, and very shortly after she arrives there, they start to notice, they can see from the space station down on Earth, like what looks like nuclear warfare going off. Like they can see the bombs from space. So it's an intense war going down on the surface, and then both the Russians and Americans are both given the directives to take control of the space station. So it sounds like it should be action packed. There's only 6 people in this movie, right? And you know, there's 3 and 3. And
how are the visuals in this? Are the visuals pretty solid for this type of film?
Yeah, at times when the movie first started off, it almost made me start feeling like seasick, because you're in these very tight, you know, tight hallways of the ISS, and there's no gravity and it's constantly spinning. So at times the camera is kind of spinning to give you that feel like you're in space. It is effective, but early on in the movie, I was like, I don't know if I can handle this for the whole movie. Luckily, it kind of calms down after that. Ariana DeBose's performance is fine. Worth shouting out. There's an actor, I believe it's pronounced Pilu Asbeck. He's a Danish actor, but I most know him as playing Euron Greyjoy in Game of Thrones, who's like a notoriously evil character in that show. And this actor, he's been in a few other, actually, most recently, he had a very small role in Aquaman in the Lost Kingdom as Cordax. He's like in the flashbacks of this undead, you know, society underwater in Aquaman. He's like the former king in a few brief scenes. He's in Uncharted, he's in some other things, but he's typically used as like an evil character. And I think he's kind of typecast as that, especially from his time on Game of Thrones and how memorably awful his character was in that show. And he is one of the Russians aboard the space station in this movie. And I will say that they use his casting and persona well in this movie, like, because you just know he's not gonna be good news, and I think that they utilize that in an interesting way.
So it sounds like you didn't. It sounds like you didn't hate this film.
I didn't hate it. There's some fun kind of cat and mouse scenes. I love space stuff in general. Like, I'm a sci-fi nerd. I am usually a homer for anything that's set in space. Like, I'm gonna find something to like about it, and I do think this movie was atmospheric and from a technical standpoint done pretty well. It's just there's not very much to it. It becomes this kind of game of cat and mouse that's dragged out. There's some interesting moments, but it's a pretty unmemorable film, and I can kind of see why it just got dumped to theaters in this way. It's a shame. It could have been a really good streaming original for really.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
Streamers.
I felt like this could have been a great streamer movie for even Netflix. I think it would have been big for Netflix or anyone else, or
true,
Prime,
like,
or Prime Video. To be honest, I think this would have been a good addition to Prime Video.
As a theatrical release with very little fanfare, it's kind of like meh. But if this had released with the Netflix machine behind it and been like a new Netflix original release, and I had watched it on the streamer, I would have been like, that's pretty good for you know, considering the quality of some Netflix originals. This would have been on the better state of it. So yeah, it's a shame that this got dumped in the way that it did. It's perfectly fine, but I guess it is ultimately a little bit unmemorable. So I get it.
So it's a streaming movie, which makes sense. And speaking of streamers, we got 2 shows on 2 different streaming platforms. I mentioned before, it's really hard for me to watch TV shows, but if you give me something to binge watch, I'll binge watch and be done with it within the day. I can't wait week to week. I lose interest or I forget about them. The first show we're going to talk about is Ted. And I'm sure everyone knows that name, Ted, the lovable furry bear that's kind of like Peter Griffin. I call him the Peter Griffin bear because that's what I see. Created by Seth MacFarlane, got 2 feature films, and now transitioning from the big screen to a prequel series on Peacock. I love the movie. Did you love the movies? I loved the first 2 movies.
I like the first one a lot. I thought the second one was not as good, but I do like the first one.
That's true. The first one's stronger. And then so I'll say this. I think the show is stronger than the second movie easily. And it really gives the first film a run for its money because it shows us a 90s era of Ted and what's the boy's name that Mark Wahlberg plays? John Bennett, played by Max Burkholder, and their adventures being, I guess they're in high school. It is high school time for them. Mm-hmm. And it takes place in the 90s. And I absolutely love it because one of the biggest factors in the show is there's a family aspect to it that was very surprising. And I love seeing Scott Grimes from Orville. I love that show. And I hope we get more of that from Seth MacFarlane. And this show has Seth MacFarlane written all over it. You got Scott Grimes that knows Seth's humor and knows how to deliver very well. And I just love it. It's like a live action Family Guy with a TVMA rating. But I'm surprised for a TVMA rating, it's not as strong as it could be. What you see on the show and what you hear.
I feel like it's pretty raunchy.
I think it could be raunchier though. I just feel like if you're going to do that, it could go even further, but it doesn't, because it does have a lot of sweet moments. If you think about it, there is a lot of sweetness in this show between the cousins and mom and dad. I just feel like everyone's good hearted at the same time, and they're just living their life up north. I love everyone's accents in here too. I just love all the pop culture references to the 90s, and I just think it has great writing. Some really funny jokes. Not all of them land, but none of them are like, oh God. Just some of the jokes are just pretty simple. But this is a show I felt like I was very comfortable watching, and it's kind of like a comfort show for me. That's been a while to have a show like this.
I agree with that. And I think that a lot of what you said, the strengths of the show in a way become its weakness too. And what I mean by that is I agree. There's a lot of sentimental moments. I can see why they made the show in this way. It's almost like a Family Matters or Full House kind of sitcom, but in the 90s with Ted and John as he's growing up. And like it works because John was this boy who made a wish and his teddy bear came to life, and Ted gained national recognition for being a living teddy bear. And then, you know, things calm down and you live life. And so there's a lot of stories that could be told with John and Teddy in high school and with the family aspect of it. So there's comedy, there's heartfelt moments, there's a lot of foul language, which is fine. That being said, this show to me would work better in a true sitcom fashion. Give me 22 minutes, quick in and out with that kind of comedy, and it would work great. A lot of these episodes are like 40 to 45 minutes long, which are just way too long for this style of show. The episodes drag out, and there's 7 episodes. I'm like, man, y'all could have had 10 episodes easy, make them a little shorter, flow a little bit better. And I think that from that standpoint, I'd be even more enthusiastic about it. But some of the episodes I was like, okay, like I get it. But the humor is there. It works. The 90s setting kind of gives them an excuse to make some jokes that in today's society are like more frowned upon, but they use the 90s setting as like a we don't know any better kind of thing to teach these lessons or make jokes on our current climate that I think actually work pretty well. Like I some of those made me laugh. But you can tell that Seth MacFarlane is just a big fan of 90s culture, and the pop culture references from the early 90s and late 80s are just like, they are abound in the show. They are all over the place. There's so many movie and TV show references from that time period. And as somebody that grew up in the 90s, like most of those jokes hit pretty well for me too. So I think the episodes are too long, but the format and what they're doing here works and is generally pretty funny.
Yeah, I'm with you on the 40-minute runtime. I love this show. Like, I really love it. I think it's almost a pretty perfect show to me. But with that runtime, towards the end, you're like, I get it. You know, wrap it up. It's fine. Give me the next episode, because it does draw out some of it. But I mean, I love the cast. I think the casting's perfect. I love everyone on it. I mean, mom and dad is pretty darn good. Really good chemistry there, and the writing's really great. And just Ted looks awesome. The budget had to go making Ted look like this, and it's just like, can some other movies kind of figure out what they did right to make Ted look really good and make everyone act? I want to see behind the scenes of how they're acting with like what's in place of Ted and what are they looking at for this, and because a lot of it's really great. And there's also some other characters that come to life too, and some other things. There's one episode where something else comes to life, which was pretty hilarious. So if you have not seen Ted, that's one to watch. But yeah, the show does push the boundaries with some of the humor and some of the, there's some vulgar stuff in it, but I thought for TVMA that Seth would go even further, but really doesn't. So I think it's pretty tame for what I was expecting.
Yeah, and you can use Ted, who is literally a teddy bear who doesn't know any better, to be the one to say things that everybody else gasps at. Like it works in that way. Like he can be offensive, he can be profane, and he's a teddy bear. And so that worked over a decade ago. It still works now. And yeah, I would say it's overall pretty solid. It's a good point about the acting alongside, a CG bear. Like I wonder how that they did that. Seth MacFarlane directed all the episodes. Obviously he's present on set and I'm sure he's doing the voice or doing the readings as they're doing it, but all the actors do a pretty good job of acting alongside this CG bear.
Yeah, it's a high school story. So like this show is the best, like has the highest streaming numbers for Peacock. It sets a viewership record for a Peacock debut. Ted has, and I think it says it's the most watched title through its first 3 days, which is really impressive. I did not know there was that many Ted fans out there, but maybe it's more like the Family Guy people, fans of Seth MacFarlane. There's a lot of them for sure. That's 100% sure that there's a lot of Family Guy, American Dad, even Orville fans out there. And when you have Scott Grimes obviously in it, who's a big character in the Orville, that's really cool too, because everyone else is really unknown in the show.
The Boston accents in this, which obviously that's like a trademark of Mark Wahlberg in the movies. And I just feel like the accents in this show are like purposefully over the top Boston. Because when you first start it, it's almost distracting. And then I quickly realized, like, I think that they're doing this on purpose. Like they are going above and beyond. And it becomes funny in itself. I appreciated it.
No, it's excellent. And I'm hoping that, we get season 2 announcement soon. I hope they change the format, to be honest, but because I really think it does drag when you're 7 episodes at 40 minutes. That's really impressive, though, that they're able to do that. And that has to be really expensive, too, to do that with Ted.
We're also at a time where the streaming landscape is very interesting with the streamers that are excelling and the ones that are failing. And I think that within the next few years, we're going to see some of these streamers get purchased or bought or, rolled into other services. Like, I don't know how long Paramount Plus is for this world, just in the state of things. That being said, Peacock, I think people make jokes about it with the name, whatever. That being said, I've been booting up my Peacock account a lot lately, whether it's for NFL playoff games, whether it's to watch Ted, whether it's to watch the reality show The Traitors that I like. The Royal Rumble was this past weekend. Like, I've been using my Peacock account a lot, and more shows like Ted is not a bad thing for the service, especially if the numbers are up there. So I don't know, kind of interested to see where the future of Peacock goes from here.
Yeah, Peacock, I don't think I've watched anything of late of Peacock. Paramount, I have not touched in a while. Prime Video, I have not touched other than I believe for Reacher. Prime Video has
watched Invincible, which I guess resumes in a couple months here.
Oh, let me give you a little hot take there. I hate this season 2 split off of months between just mid-season stuff. It's just like, give me the whole season. Why are you just cutting me halfway through? I lose interest. I might not even like pick up the rest of season 2. I kind of like forgot about it now.
I'm totally with you. Yeah. I don't like the split season. Either give me weekly episodes or give it to me all at once. Like, don't do this whole here's 4 and then here's another 4 2 months later. It's silly.
It's like, this is not television. Like, this is not old school television to be pulling a move like that. And then speaking of, you watch your wrestling on Peacock, you see WWE Raw will be heading to Netflix. And it seems like we talked about this for international, it looks like all of WWE will be offered internationally on Netflix is what they're doing with that, I believe. Or am I mistaken on that?
I believe,
I think that's what I was reading.
That's right.
Yeah. So like for international viewers, mostly everything will be on Netflix for WWE. And then if that proves to be pretty solid, I wonder what the contracts are, because obviously NBC Universal has strong ties with WWE, but it seems like Netflix is pushing hard to get as much wrestling content. And so you're going to have to see some streamers rolling in together, because there's way too many of them and not really offering much. Netflix, they've been dumping a lot of movies on there, but things I've seen like 2 times already. So nothing really new on Netflix.
Live sports alone is what's keeping cable TV alive. And the streamers know that to really be dominant, live sports is the answer for long-term success. We're already seeing Thursday Night Football on Amazon Prime. We had playoff games on Peacock. Netflix with their WWE deal is getting into the business of live sports entertainment. And this is just the start. And we're going to see it with the NBA rights here soon. That's you could do whole podcasts on that as well. That WWE Raw news coming in a weird week in news for WWE that we won't get into, but oh boy. But that being said, not to get into all that, the Raw news is big, and the Royal Rumble was like a solid event. So, but that's all neither here nor there.
Another thing I wish I didn't know about it. I don't think they're advertising properly when it comes to WWE, because I didn't know. I mean, I used to be an avid fan, not as a big fan as you are now still. But if I saw an advertisement somewhere that was going to be on Peacock on this day, I would have watched it. But like, I didn't see anything for it on my end. So ad delivery people doing a bad job, because if you just delivered one ad to me to remind me about it, I probably would have watched it. But I had no clue about it, and even on my Twitter side, it didn't pull up until after it was done. So I'm not sure. More ads need to be put in for this stuff, because I'll watch it if I know about it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of streamers, we didn't even mention Disney Plus in all this conversation, because I guess Disney Plus is doing a decent job. But Marvel, the MCU, have been up and down. And then there was a show Echo that dropped all the episodes at once, which I loved that. This show, it's like a prequel, sequel, follow-up to Hawkeye, for the character Echo, because it jumps around a bit for me. Like it was, I thought this show Echo was going to start right where that scene ends in Hawkeye when she's shooting Fisk, Kingpin. And then like, that's like the scene that it should have started off with. And then you could have gone back and forth. But if you just start right there with a really strong and like shocking moment, I thought this show would have been like really awesome. I thought it was just a show to give us 2 glorified cameos with Daredevil and Fisk. A TVMA rating that does not feel TVMA, especially if we just watched Ted, talked about Ted. And Ted is a TVMA show, and I spoke about it, but it could have pushed the boundaries a little bit more. Echo is like barely a PG-13 show to me. I don't know there's no cursing in it. I didn't recognize any cursing. Bloodshed, I didn't see anything of gruesomeness, maybe blood being thrown here and there.
Yeah, there's like one particularly violent scene between Kingpin and like an ice cream man, but I'm with you. I'm like trying to think back now, and I know that there's some shooting, I guess a little bit more violence, but like yeah, I mean nothing crazy.
No, it struggles to establish like what a TVMA Marvel Studios show is. The storyline is compelling, but nothing of importance to me. I don't think it's just such a grounded show, and it's so micro of a story. I just don't know what the point of it was. But like my excitement,
I can tell you.
Yeah, tell me the point of this.
Tell you what the point of this is.
Please do.
The point of this was in 2020 or 2021, when Disney needed to appeal to their investors, they announced a whole slew of Disney Plus shows that included a ton of different MCU series. And that was when the MCU was literally could not be toppled. And now here we are in 2024 when there have been a few stumbles recently with the MCU. And now there's all these different shows that they've promised that they now have to deliver on. And Echo was one that was announced. And now here it is, 5 episodes dropped in the middle of January. All that to say, I don't think Echo's bad. Like it's fine. Like anytime Kingpin is on the screen, I am interested. Otherwise, I thought some of it is a little bit of a slog. That being said, at least the episodes aren't particularly long or drawn out. Some of them are pretty quick, right around 30 minutes, 35 minutes, which I do appreciate. I agree with you what you said about the cameos. There's a cameo in the very first episode in a scene that made me perk up and go, okay, because that scene was actually really cool. But then that character does not show up again for the rest of the series and isn't even really referenced at all after that. There's some interesting ideas here. I like the idea of once I kind of realized, the name Echo and what that means, and echoing your ancestors and the history of the Choctaw and all that, like all that worked. I think that the performance of Alaqua Cox, who plays Maya Lopez, aka Echo, is like pretty good, but I don't know. It's
a lot of subtitles. I would tell you that. You have to,
and I'm fine with that. Like I
just
don't
fine, but
reading.
us, sometimes we get distracted by our phones and stuff like that. So there's something you might miss, or you're just distracted, or sometimes I'm working on something. And so I understand why there's subtitles. I'm totally for the reasonings why, but it's really hard where it's like majority due to the language or due to the sign language, and then the native language. It's just it's hard to sometimes keep up if you like disappear for a second and come back. You can't follow 100%. This is a sit down and stare at the screen to follow every part of the story.
But I'm pro inclusion, and I think that the Choctaw aspects of the show are interesting, but it just feels like every conversation that happens in this show is so drawn out. Like every scene lasts so much longer than it needs to. When there's action on the screen, like the action's pretty decent for the most part. I feel like it's just a little bit more few and far between as I'd like. And you get a lot of Kingpin and cool aspects in the first episode. The second and third episode kind of drop a little bit of that, and it really slows down. And then you get more Kingpin in the fourth and fifth episodes, and those I feel like really flowed. Or flowed at least better than the some of those first three. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, it really feels like more of a show to place Wilson Fisk and the Kingpin more firmly in the MCU moving forward than it does to really push Echo forward in any particular way, because this really seemed like a standalone story. I don't really see Echo being incorporated into other shows. I guess she could show up in Daredevil Born Again or something like that.
What about the Thunderbolts? Could they bring her in the Thunderbolts?
Maybe. I mean, I guess it's hard for me to picture her with her like abilities or power set really fighting alongside like, a Taskmaster or Winter Soldier. I mean, I guess you could. Not trying to downplay that, because I thought the performance was really good. I just don't see where this fits in the future, other than just giving us this continuation of Hawkeye. Also, that's another thing, is like this show kind of jumps all over timeline wise. Like there's the current plot going on, but then sometimes you see flashbacks to the events that went on in Daredevil in Hawkeye, and sometimes you see flashbacks to when she's a child, and it kind of jumps between. And sometimes I'd be like, okay, where are we now? Oh, Kingpin doesn't have an eye patch. Okay, so this is right after Hawkeye, or this is before Hawkeye. So you there's a few times I had to kind of grasp, like, where am I right now?
I'm with you on that. I had a problem with the timelines and figuring out what was present, what was in the past. Resampling a lot of footage, it seemed like, too. Which was odd. I was like, I think I recognize this scene. They're just replaying it. It's like, okay, you could have done that in the beginning. It's just like a refresher, but not make it part of your episode to make it seem like it's new. Because some people, I'm sure, are like, oh, this is a new. I was like, no, this has been shown before. This is nothing extraordinary. And
yeah.
Now we have shots of the Daredevil series. Have you seen some of the behind the scenes stuff that people are
I
sharing?
do. I've seen the Foggy Nelson, Karen Page being back. Yeah, that's exciting and good for them. And not really starting this series new. They're really, it sounds like, kind of continuing. I believe the actor that played Bullseye in the third season of Daredevil is returning in this series now officially. I was just reading about that this morning.
Yeah, that's what I read as well, and that is exciting to see this. And so I'm hoping. I mean, sure, make it TVMA. I don't know what that means for Marvel, to be honest. This was not Echo was not TVMA for me, so I'm not sure whether they do it Daredevil. Curious of what obviously Deadpool 3 rated R for Marvel Studios is going to look like. I just don't know what their definition of the stuff is. As you know, as a Disney owned company, what is their definition of mature content? Because so far on their own, they haven't been able to really deliver anything that strongly. And I really wish just Echo never happened and they were just more wanted to get that Daredevil show done faster and get started quicker.
I don't know if I'd go as far to say that I wish Echo hadn't happened, but I understand what you're meaning. Like, because it's kind of like a nothing burger of a show. Like, you watch 5 episodes and you're like, okay, there it was. And other than the Kingpin stuff for me, like, that's the stuff that I take away is what does this mean for the future? But, Alekwa Cox, who plays Echo, I think it's really great that she is a deaf actress and playing a deaf character who's an amputee. Like, all of that is real. And I think that that's pretty cool for an inclusive standpoint. And they actually do utilize that in some really cool ways. But as far as what the future of this character is and where she fits in is where I'm like, okay, there's some cool moments here, but where does this character fit in the future? I don't know. So yeah, it's tough, but at least it was a quick watch. I think that there's some redeeming qualities of it, but ultimately, it's not my least favorite of the MCU Disney Plus series, but it's definitely not ranking above my, within my list of top shows.
Yeah, when it comes to MCU Disney Plus shows, they've been solid and okay. I mean, you still got an Ironheart series. I think they finished, and that's coming out. There's a Wakanda series. I'm not sure if it's animated or live action. I think it's live action, but takes place way back in the past. With another generation from Wakanda and more what if, and I really don't care for the what if stuff. I wish that was just more standalone and not try to push it down our throats as a MCU thing. I'm just tired of too much MCU stuff, to be honest. Kind of need a break from it. It's a little too much, and I'm a big Marvel fan.
Yeah, it's tough. This year, luckily, we're all going to get a little bit of a breather. I am excited for Deadpool 3. Otherwise, how about Madam Web? Sean, are you excited about Madam Web?
Actually, I am, because I'm reading more about it, and it takes place in the past. It takes place in like 2009, I believe. It's different, and it makes sense. It says it's set in 2003. As its own standalone, obviously, universe. I'm curious of like, did it have any surprises for us? But other than that, I'm down for it. If you make these little Spider-Verse films and don't make them too connected and kind of just standalone universe stories, I'm down for it. It's just like when I said for DC, they can have the Elseworld stories. I'm totally down for those. If you just do it, where I don't have to think about, is this connected to this? Who's this person's Batman? It's just have a standalone. I'm all down for that.
I'm excited for Madam Web in the sense of like, I just want to see what they're doing. I mean, it just feels like a bomb waiting to happen. Like, I can't imagine it's going to perform well. I almost have like I'm trying to get my words right as far as describing my fit, because I'm not excited for it, but it's almost like, it's like this weird enigma that I just want to check out, but I'm not expecting anything good to come from it.
Will it be better than Morbius?
I mean, that's not a high bar, but I do think the trailers for Madam Web actually look pretty atrocious. So we'll see.
If it's like
I like a lot of people in the movie. Like, I like Dakota Johnson. I like Sydney Sweeney. I like people in the movie, but I just think the trailers look pretty rough.
We'll see. Maybe it just will be like a typical 2003 film. Those movies weren't that great back then. Some of them. Maybe the vibes they'll give off. And then you got the Kraven the Hunter movie, which is interesting.
Yeah, that's another rough one. And Venom 3 is supposed to be this year also.
Which I don't know what they're doing with that. And did you hear about Marvel and Sony having issues of what type of story they want to do for Spider-Man 4? That
I can't believe it.
Tom Holland and Kevin Feige. Yeah, they want a grounded story. I really think it needs to be a Spider-Man, Daredevil, Fisk story, tie in something else, and then because I guess they want to do another multiverse movie, but save that for the Secret Avengers stuff, or not Secret Avengers, Secret War, the next Avengers film. And I don't know why they don't do another film with Toby or Garfield. Like, what's the contract like with Holland that they can't have their own standalone? Maybe is that what it is? Only one standalone Spider-Man, one main deal. I'm curious.
Probably so. I don't know. Or you risk confusing audiences, I guess. I don't know.
Not anymore. Not after the last Spider-Man film and all of them. It all makes sense. And so maybe just have them go back to their world and tell us a story based on that. I don't know. Like I said, give me all the Spider-Man movies, all the Batman movies. I'm all in. That's all I need.
I'm with you. I'll see all of them. I will always see all of them.
Yeah, so you're definitely Marvel fans here. We'll see what happens. But yeah, if you haven't yet, check out previous episodes of the Moviegoers Society. Check out my podcast, Nerdtropolis Mayor Presents, where I interview directors and actors, all on the Nerdtropolis Podcast Network. And once again, Drew, where can they find you?
You can find me at Drew Munhausen on all the different social media platforms and weekly over at Fresh Out the Podcast. And of course, here every week on the Moviegoers Society podcast. What number did you say we're at now?
28.
28. Awesome.
Thanks again for joining us for another episode of the Moviegoers Society. Once again, I'm Sean Tajipour, the mayor of Nerdtropolis, and we will see you at the movies.